All aboard! Next stop, Chicago Junction.
Yes, it's Chicago Junction, being the radio program that is about everything that is railroad, whether it be real or model. Now here's our boss, the head of the Windy City Hometown Radio Network, as well as being the chief electrical engineer, Mr. John DeVita.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Chicago Junction from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, May the 27th, the year of our Lord, 2015. Today, the panel will be talking about railroads and model railroads. And now, to start today's broadcast, here's our announcer, Mr. Brian.
Oh, thank you. Now, we're going to be a little bit shy today. So our host, while he's on vacation, is now going to be Doug.
Howdy, everybody. Name's Doug Kenyuk. I represent Railroads and Short Lines Club of Chicago, adjunct professor at Wright College, and an all-round train enthusiast. And sitting next to me is Mr. Velour.
Don't worry, everybody does that. Yes, I'm your announcer, Brian Velour, and I represent National Railway Historical Society, Chicago chapter. I'm also a cinder sniffer, which is a live steam enthusiast from Cincinnati. Retired Navy and railroader. Was a locomotive engineer and conductor for C&W, UP/Metra. And again, I'm just a rail nut, too. I'm an FR into the max.
Yeah, we have a one-track mind, right?
You got it. Well, we always know with the light at the end of the tunnel to get out of the way because it is an oncoming train.
That's right. I had posted on my Facebook, somebody sent me a poster showing a set of abandoned tracks, and it says, when you walk along them, do you glance back every few minutes looking for the train?
Yes, I do.
Yes, everybody does. So anyway, tell us, since you're Mr. Steam, what's going on with that Norfolk Western? Was steamed up this last weekend, wasn't it?
It was steamed up last weekend. It's actually next... It'll be getting ready to leave town next week. They're doing it, well, this weekend it'll be fired up for photography and such. They're going to do Railfan Weekend, show it off, and let it stretch its legs a little bit around the property. But then it'll actually be steaming to Roanoke from Spencer. And it's due to pull in on the 28th, I believe.
In Roanoke?
In Roanoke, yes.
Now, is it going to be going on tour of the country, or is it going to hang around Virginia for a while?
Norfolk, yeah, well, it'll be officially under the Norfolk Southern, part of their 21st Century Steam program. And they'll be running at least June and July. They're running in Virginia, operating out of Roanoke and then to Lynchburg and Bristol.
Okay. And
they're doing half-day trips, and they have a full spectrum of cars from all the way to first class, which the tickets are for the half-day trip $229. $169 will get you a dome. Regular coach seats are $89.
It's cheaper than Grateful Dead concert.
Yeah, it is.
Some of the other steam engines you mentioned in the past, was it T1?
Oh, yeah, you have two T1s.
Okay.
Reading T1 is now in Cleveland. It was the 2100. The class engine built in 1945 for the Reading Company.
And the wheel configuration is, for the people who don't know what a T1 is?
A 484.
Okay.
Northern class locomotive. Of all the Northerns built, it is number 3 in power. A home-built unit by the Reading Company itself. The other T1 is a part of a program that's somebody put together, a program to build a brand new Pennsylvania Railroad T1, which is a passenger locomotive, a unique duplex design, they called it, where they has twin driving wheels, but there's a rigid frame.
Okay.
So it is a 4-4-4-4, and goes over 100 miles an hour, streamlined, and by the famous designer Raymond Loewy, who designed Greyhound, the Greyhound Signia at first, and that was fully with the body design of the Scenic Cruiser that Greyhound drove in the 60s.
Right. They call them Vista Cruisers or something?
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess his most famous styling was the final design of the Coca-Cola bottle that everybody grew up with. There's let's see. Well, locomotive, the Age of Steam Roundhouse owner, Jerry Jacobson, got a hold and bought himself another 060 steam locomotive.
Oh, from where?
Actually out of the Mad River and Nickel Plate Museum in Bellevue, Ohio. They had an 060 B&O switcher, which was the old Buffalo, Rochester, or Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Rochester Railroad, which became part of the B&O. And it's the only one of those locomotives, the only locomotive saved by that railroad. Only because it ended up working in a stone quarry after it was retired from the B&O.
Very good.
But he got that. He's going to cosmetically restore it at this time because a lot of parts were rusted and missing by various groups that had wanted to restore it and got misplaced.
Okay, now what's there any news out of the Heston Steam Museum?
Nope. Restoring some of the track, replacing ties that needed to be replaced. But they're planning for, everything's just gearing up and all the final preparations for opening weekend this weekend.
Now, what's being run in terms of steam over at Illinois Railway Museum this summer?
And it will be the Frisco engine, the Decapod, which is a 210 coal burning from the Frisco Railroad. Was what they call a Russian Decapod. From the design, it was designed was built originally to go to Russia, and then the contract got canceled by the government. Something about a revolution over there at that time, and so with adjustments made for the 5-foot gauge that they had, they fixed them so they ran on an American gauge, and a lot of railroads ended up buying them. When I finally went into the history of the Reading Company, in fact, found out they actually bought 4 of them, which is unique because mostly they used Wooten fireboxes. They needed wide fireboxes for burning anthracite coal. And so to have some bituminous fireboxes was unique for the Reading. But yeah, we were you mentioned the Chicago Northwestern locomotive was finally fired up.
Oh, that's nice.
Got its first fire in its boiler, ready to do the tests.
Now, do they have a Shay they used to run back and forth, or was it a...
The Shay's being built, and they hope to have it ready by September.
Okay, so that one's out of service at the moment.
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, they have another locomotive that they're working on, a 280 UP type consolidation, and that's is finally moving along towards completion. It should, if they keep working on it, they should have it ready by next year, at the end, the end of the summer.
Shall we shift gears and talk about this has not been a good week for the railroads?
Oh, I believe it has not been. We can start. Let's start local with the CTA.
With the CTA yellow line, yes, there's been a washout or embankment collapse over by McCormick Boulevard in the yellow line. Metropolitan Sanitary Water Reclamation District, as they like to call themselves, was doing a new tunneling project, and apparently they tunneled out a little too much material. The right-of-way collapsed. One track's in midair, the other track is passable, but they had to shut the line down, and looks like it's going to be down for at least 2 to 4 weeks minimum while they try to figure out how to fix it.
All right.
A lot of people don't realize these embankments, not only on the CTA, but most of the lines that were elevated in Chicago, railroads included, those embankments are actually sand filled, not dirt and gravel. And if you look at the cross section, a lot of them are, they put up the cement walls and they just filled it in with sand and other cheap materials. So if there's an opportunity, these things can go at any time.
So in other words, if like you get a busted water pipe or something, it makes it easier for that to wash out, and you get your sinkhole.
Yes. So that's one local. The other local news, 606 will be opening in 2 weeks. They're talking about the Weber line. That's the next one that's going to be converted to a trail. Runs from Wilson Avenue up to Lincolnwood. That's been out of service for a while. Chicago and Lincolnwood keeps asking UP for an extension to buy it. But that one's going to become the next one. So, bad news, good news. We have some good news on locally. So 606 is supposed to be opening June 5th. So probably the week after that, I'll be up there checking it out. And then they're talking about the Weber line that runs from about Wilson Avenue northeast to, actually it ended up in Evanston ultimately, but at least to Devon Avenue. Then Lincolnwood will do their part to Skokie.
Okay.
Let's go national news.
Okay, well, let's go to Philadelphia.
Oh, wait a minute. We have one more local one. There was a derailment this morning on Metro.
Yes, it was at 11th Street, actually where the Roosevelt Station is. Roosevelt Street Road Station, right by Grant Park. The looks of it, the way it happened, they derailed at 11th Street when they were switching out of the yard. And the night crew ended up derailing.
So they got that back on the track. Apparently, they're back in operation.
Yeah, they're
now.
back in operation about an hour ago.
Yep.
And they got the track repaired and everything ready. Yes, I remember all the fun there.
Okay, now we got to talk about the gorilla in the room one.
Yeah, the Amtrak.
Yes.
And it was interesting. I mean, everybody's heard so far 50 different reasons why it happened in just 4 days of the investigation. Yes, high speed caused it. Speeding caused it going around the curve, just like it would happen on any road. And they're trying to blame a lot of different things, but the definite high speed. But we got to figure out why they were going high speed.
Yeah, why was there in the last, about 2 minutes, they claimed that things suddenly accelerated?
Yes, but why they're leaking all this information and not sticking to the investigation so they can get a proper timeline. I mean, we're talking 5 miles out of the station that he was in. He was at 30th Street Station, took off, and by the time the last mile, it just what?
He's got the message. So anyway, the curve was rated at 50. And I know we could take this up after our call-in comes through, but as a former engineer, isn't there I asked you this earlier, and you said yes, there is. There should have been an alerter that said you're going too fast for this section of track, and this is prior to installing PTC.
But also it goes to the speed of the locomotive. Now, like with Metra, our engines were geared for 79 miles an hour. Or, I mean, that was our speed, and then we'd have something kick in to automatically set the brakes.
All right, so you had like a governor type thing on there.
But remember, the locomotive that was using, the electric locomotive, they're set to run over 125 miles an hour.
That's right.
So it wouldn't have the alerter set. And so it wouldn't kick it out.
And now the track itself is probably rated for high speed, even though that area, that particular area, is on a curve.
Right, it was on a curve, but it was sanctioned for just 55 miles an hour. I mean, even Acela goes through there at 55.
And that's amazing that it wasn't an Acela train that this happened to.
No, it was what they call a regional train, locomotive hauled with cars.
Okay, we just got the signal. We have a nice phone in today. Stephanie, are you there?
I am.
Hi, Stephanie. This is Doug from the train show. We met at the train show and talked briefly at the Amtrak National Train Day. And so what I'd like to do is, first of all, have you tell us what your group is and what you guys do.
So we are the Illinois Labor History Society, and we are the oldest popular labor history society anywhere in the United States. And we do programs about working people and labor history in Chicago and all over, and including a lot of the employees that worked at Pullman.
Okay, and that's our focus of the interest is with railroads. So let's talk about the Pullman guys.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
We'd like to hear more about what you do with the Pullman in the area down there.
Sure. So Pullman just became one of our nation's newest national monuments, part of the National Park System. And the reason for that is it has some of the most interesting, I think, railroad and working people's history in the United States. So Pullman, George Pullman invented this idea called the sleeping car. And what it was before the sleeping car and George Pullman, it was very uncomfortable to travel on trains, especially long distances. And he thought that there was a better way to do it. So he made these, what he called the palace cars, that were, temperature controlled and had berths that came down so you could sleep and be comfortable. And it just became the way to travel across the country. Well, on the south side of Chicago, he made a company town. You didn't have to live in his company town to work for his company, but you probably would have a pretty hard time getting promoted if you didn't live there. And what's really interesting about it is he thought that he could keep his employees happy by regulating pretty much every aspect of their lives. So he wouldn't, for example, have any saloons in his town. The only place that you could buy liquor was at the Hotel Florence, which was named for his daughter, but you had to be pretty wealthy to stay in the hotel. So if you were a working person, you probably couldn't get a drink in the town. You had to go outside. He also, there was only one church in the town. He decided what was put in the library. And he was convinced that this was a good way to keep his employees happy. But what happened was, in 1893, the country went through the worst depression that it experienced before the Great Depression. And his employees, he cut their wages by about as much as a third, maybe even a little bit more. And his employees were paying him rent, and they said, hey, if you're paying us less, we can't afford to pay these rents anymore. And what's really interesting is he didn't cut the cost of what he was giving the dividends to his shareholders. And so the employees ended up going on strike and boycotting the Pullman trains. And it became a nationwide boycott and basically stopped train traffic in major cities all throughout the country.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, I believe he still kept a big fear of it even after it finally got resolved. Isn't that true?
That's right. So what ended up happening is the railroad companies were pretty upset because they had food, rotting on train tracks, and they couldn't, at the time, Chicago was the biggest distributor of mail order catalog orders in the country, and, they couldn't get out their goods, and they said, this has got to stop. But the workers, were saying, we can't live on what you're paying us, and we can't continue to pay these rents. And Pullman just refused to talk to them. And so what ended up happening is the President Grover Cleveland said if the trains had mail cars attached to them, that the federal troops would get involved. He famously said that if one postcard wouldn't be delivered, he was willing to bring out the federal troops. So what the railroad owners did is attach mail cars to as many trains as they could to get them moving again. And federal troops came out, and there was a lot of violence around rail yards all throughout the country, especially in the Midwest and on the East Coast. And a lot of workers were shot. Most of them were unarmed. And so two interesting things come out of this. The first is the holiday Labor Day, because after all this had settled down, President Cleveland realized that he had a lot of pretty angry workers, not just in the railroad industry, but also in other industries as well, because they basically saw it as the federal government coming out on the side of the employers against the workers. And so in order to try to sort of appease the workers, one of the things that President Grover Cleveland did was he instituted Labor Day as a national holiday, which we still celebrate today. The other thing that's really interesting is George Pullman, who had been seen as an innovator, sort of went through a pretty downturn in his public image. Congress had a hearing and basically blamed a lot of what happened on Pullman. They said if he had just talked to his employees and, come to the table and talked to them. And during the strike, he had actually left town and let his other managers take care of it. And so sort of public opinions came down on him. And Pullman was so worried about the fact that his employees now didn't like him that when he was buried, he told his family that he wanted to be buried under concrete and asphalt and iron bars so that nobody could dig up his grave.
That's pretty extreme.
Yep. But he was probably right, because a lot of his employees and a lot of other people throughout the country were pretty angry with him at the time.
Okay, Stephanie, now what about the Porters Union?
So the other thing that's really important because of one of the reasons that Pullman became a national park was Pullman didn't just make and develop the Pullman cars. He didn't just produce them. He also provided the labor that worked on these cars. And this labor was almost entirely African American, and that was intentional. Pullman was one of the largest employers of African American people at the time, at the turn of the century. And his idea was that black workers would be more suited at the time, this is what he thought, for that kind of service. But the thing is this work was often really degrading. Black workers were often called George, as for George Pullman, instead of their regular names. They weren't allowed to go into the traditional white jobs, such as being an engineer. And even sometimes if a car didn't have an engineer on it and the Pullman porters were doing that function, they wouldn't be paid the same rate as engineers. The other thing is that the porters, Pullman in general, didn't want a union in his company, and especially with the porters. So after Pullman died, President Lincoln's son became president of the company, and he also did not want unions in his company. And so for a very long time, the porters didn't have any union representation. But what's interesting is that the porters were paid enough of a wage that they often became some of the leading middle-class residents of the towns that they lived in, and they played an incredibly important role in the civil rights movement. It wasn't until 1925 that the porters decided to get really serious about forming a union, and they hired a man named A. Philip Randolph. A. Philip Randolph was in Harlem, New York at the time, and he had a reputation for speaking out for black workers' rights. And they figured if they hired A. Philip Randolph, the company couldn't fire him like they could fire them if they started talking about a union. It took 12 years, and it was pretty much an uphill struggle. But at the end of it, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters was formed, and that was the first national African American union recognized by the American Federation of Labor. So it's pretty significant.
Okay, that is quite interesting.
Yeah, and another thing about the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, which I think often we kind of gets lost to history, is they played a really important role in the civil rights movement. So, for example, A. Philip Randolph, once he got that union up and going, he turned his attention to some other things. And one of those things was in World War II, a lot of the defense industries were very segregated. So black workers couldn't get as quality jobs as white workers could in the war industrial effort. And he started organizing what he called a March on Washington movement. And there were March on Washington clubs, and there was this big plan to have this March on Washington to demand that work in World War II would be more fairly distributed. And Franklin Roosevelt didn't want this march to come, and the president talked to A. Philip Randolph, and he said, if you cancel the march, I'll issue an order that the defense industry has to become desegregated. And he did that, which was a major and important step towards employment equity in the United States. But the other thing that I think is really interesting is that the Pullman porters often were community leaders in the towns that they lived in. And, you've probably heard the story about how Rosa Parks sat down on the bus in order to desegregate buses in Montgomery, Alabama. But what's really interesting is the person who bailed her out of jail was a Pullman porter. And he was very instrumental in inviting Dr. Martin Luther King to come and lead that bus boycott. And then A. Philip Randolph in 1963 was one of the chief architects for the March on Washington movement, where Dr. King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. And so the Pullman porters who got their start on the railroad industry played a really important role in the civil rights movement. The other thing is that the railroad industry connected the North and the South and the East and the West, and the Pullman porters were on the trains, and they were going from town to town. And one of the most important black publications at the time was the Chicago Defender. And it told, stories about what was happening in terms of lynching and other black discrimination and things that were really important stories. But in order to get that news circulated throughout the country, Pullman porters would carry the Defender on the trains, and they would bring them to other cities and get that news out. And sometimes they would even open the windows of the trains at certain places, and people would wait, and they'd throw the newspaper out the window, and then that person would bring the newspaper to their town, and many people would read it. So the trains played a really important role in circulating the news at the time.
Oh, see, now, we're starting with just an area, Pullman, talking about its historical significance and how much in history not only the town but the people played.
Definitely, and I think that's what's really interesting is that, and what I think railroads and history in general is so interesting, is that the people who lived in Pullman and made the cars, they lived in one part of the town and, in one part of the country, but that the work that they did traveled throughout the entire country, and the Pullman cars were featured in movies, books, songs. They became part of America, like an American icon, and that labor that they did was popular in places all throughout the country. I think it's really interesting how railroads circulate ideas and images to every corner of the nation.
Okay, Stephanie, now what's your relationship with the Pullman factory down in the South there?
So our relationship is the Illinois Labor History Society, we are strong supporters of remembering and preserving our Illinois history that has to do with working people. And so as discussions emerged about that this place, which was already a state historic site, becoming a national park, our president, Larry Spivak, was in on those phone calls and at the meetings, and it's been a long process. It takes a long time for something to become a national park. So on February 29th this year, President Barack Obama came to Chicago and designated it as a first national park. And the Illinois Labor History Society is still very invested in bringing people to the space. We do tours, bus tours with people, and we bring them down there to show them the old factory and the Florence Hotel and the housing of the people that live there, and talk to them about this important history.
Okay, now if people want to go on this tour, do you have a website or a way to contact you?
Sure. Our website is our website is IllinoisLaborHistory.org, and you could also email us at ilhs@prodigy, prodigy.net. And we can set up a tour for a group. We also have a little booklet that has a walking tour, and that is a really great way that if you want to explore the town, the company town on your own, and see the different sites and read about some of the people who lived in the houses and their role in the strike in 1894 and in creating the cars in the town, and what happened at the hotel and who stayed there and all that kind of stuff. We can also provide that for you as well.
Yes. Now they do have a little museum there. If I remember visiting the area in October, and they also have an open house walk. Now, will you guys keep that going?
Yes, there's two things that are down there right now. The Pullman Foundation has a small building that has exhibits, and there's film strips that you can watch, and it's really great. And that's going to be even further developed now that this is a national park. The other thing that is down there, there's a Pullman Porters Museum that more specifically, and that's a private museum of some people who live down there who developed that, and but they're working in very close conjunction with the National Park Service as they bring this story to more people. And you're right, in October there is a home tour that you can do, and you could get inside some of the homes and see what they look like from the inside, and get some history as you wander around the town. It's really neat to go down there. It feels like you step back in time. It feels almost like you're on a movie set.
Okay, well, Stephanie, we're going to wrap this up. And again, if you want to give us your website one more time.
Sure. Our website is IllinoisLaborHistory.org.
And we thank you very much for that very interesting portrait of Pullman and labor history.
Thank you. Thanks for being interested in railroad and train history and working people's history. We're really glad to talk to you.
Well, thank you again for calling in, and we hope to talk to you in the future.
All right. You have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
And I believe it's time for us to take a break. We will be right back after these words.
And you are listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norge, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, May the 27th, the year 2015. And now, back to Chicago Junction and our panel.
Oh, we're back again.
Yes,
Doug,
sir?
what you got going on?
Well, let's go pick up where we left off before we had the phone-in guest. This business about being an engineer. For example, do you have to take a test and be licensed?
Yes.
And what's involved in the testing and licensing drill?
All right. Well, first off, you have to be a conductor first, is the way it works now.
Okay.
Prior to 1986, basically when you hired, you either hired for engine service or you hired work train crew, starting off as brakemen and such. And today, because of all them being cut back, you become a conductor, and then you apply for to work in road service. You go straight to engineer. And yes, you go to school, take classes. Well, first you're learning the rule book when you become a conductor, and then you learn the jobs working there. And then when you go up to engine service, you don't know the rule book. You don't learn the rule book. You know the rule book. But every 2 years you take rules test, and this is for the signals, operations. You sit there and going through the rule book again and learning the other rules. You'll be assigned to an engineer, and you'll be running in the cab, and that's usually about a 4 to 5 month process. And then you'll be given a final exam, and then you'll also have a final road trip, which you will be graded running. And then keep going back, and you'll still the instructors will come out, and you'll always get inspection runs. They'll see how you're doing, and sometimes just quiz you while you're going along. And then every 2 years, you're taking the rules exam of the railroad, where you get the general rules and rules specific to the railroad itself.
Okay, now let's back up to the conductor position. Now there's conductors like on Metra, which is passenger, and there's freight conductors.
That is correct.
Is there a big difference between those two functions?
Well, it depends upon, well, when I worked for the Union Pacific C&W, when you were a conductor, you were either freight or you could either be either or. So, yes, certain things are different, like for passenger, okay, yes, you're walking in, you're with the people, and you're selling tickets for those stations that aren't open and such. And it's the same with, freight. You actually be riding in the engine, but you'll have the list of what you got to do. You're the one's got to make the walk to make sure that when you do the brake tests on the locomotives and such, and you got to make sure all the conjunctions.
Okay, we'll pick this up in a minute. We have another phone in. This is more your area, the Lincoln train.
Okay.
So I'll let you take care of this one.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, is this Shannon?
Yeah, speaking. Shannon Brown.
This is Brian Valleau.
Hi.
We met last year.
Okay, yeah. Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Okay. Well, I guess you're doing a follow-up for the Lincoln funeral train.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, the car looks beautiful.
Thank you. Well, we're out on tour, as you probably know, with the entire train now. We just had the car out the first part of May, but the entire train, locomotive, tender, funeral car are all on tour now.
Yeah, and I believe we're in Wellington this weekend.
Yes, this coming weekend be in Wellington, Ohio, that's right, and be operating the locomotive, and the funeral car will be on static display. People can tour it, and it's a great event. We were there with the locomotive last year, and it's put on by Lakeshore Railway Association, and we're really excited to be going back. That's a great group.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, well, I guess it's going to be actually a more busy time this year.
Oh, most definitely.
Now that they've, let's see, you had that beautiful spot on Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the June issue of Trains magazine.
Yes.
I guess Dave's puffed up about that one.
He is. Trains they've been really good to us. They've followed Dave since he was just building Leviathan, and they've been loyal followers of ours ever since. And they are another great group to work with, and it's wonderful that they're continuing to cover our story. We're very happy about that.
Okay. Now, they're still taking donations, are they not?
Absolutely, yes. Yep,
Uh,
this is all privately, funded and Dave's own money, and so yes, we are still accepting donations. And the car is, while it's beautiful as it is, it's not 100% complete. We still have a few things we'd like to do on the interior. For example, we know that the original car had a wood stove, and we were not able to obtain that in time to get the car to Springfield and out on tour this year. So there are some things like that we would like to do just to increase the historical accuracy of it a little bit, and donations are welcome.
what would the website be again?
The donation website is 2015 LincolnFuneralTrain.com. We have set up another website that is just for our schedule and kind of current events, and that one is ThoseTrainPeople.com.
ThoseTrainPeople.com?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Yes, it is.
We are those train people. So, yep, that's us.
So you're going to be in Wellington, Ohio. What's after that? What's the next couple of cities down the road?
Next couple of cities, we will be going over to Paynesville, Ohio on I believe that's the 6th and 7th, if that's Saturday and Sunday, of June. And then we got a little bit of a break, and we will go to Galesburg, Illinois.
And that'll be at the end of June, correct?
Correct, at the end of June, they're railroad days. And then July right now, we've got a lot of things that a lot of the team members, crew members and things already had scheduled, and Dave's got a few things he needs to take care of. So July is probably going to be pretty light. I don't know that we're going to have many engagements, if any, in July. And then we pick back up later on in the summer. But all of that information is on ThoseTrainPeople.com.
Oh, thank you. And let's see. Well, I guess everybody's happy.
Oh yeah, it's been amazing already, and we're only 2 stops in. 3 if you count Springfield, I guess, but 2 on the tour, and it's been incredible. It's really, we expected interest. We had no idea the volume of interest that people are showing in this, and it's wonderful. It's fantastic to see this. When we went to Charleston, Illinois, right after Springfield. Charleston is, I think there were like 21,000 people roughly in the city of Charleston, and in 2.5 days, we put 4,500 people through the car. So that was, right out of the gate like that, we were very pleasantly surprised to see that kind of interest, and it's continuing. As people see it and they talk about it and they tell more people. I'm not with them at Ashland. They're just wrapped up at Ashland, Ohio, these past 2 days, and I just got some photos from one of the crew members, and same thing, lines just snaking all the way back from the car and around the locomotive, and it's incredible. It's wonderful to see that kind of interest and to know that people are that supportive of what we're doing. That's what we did it for. And in Charleston, we had, I think it was 1,400 students, school kids come through. Most of them were like upper elementary grades, 3 through 6, and that was particularly rewarding for us, because that's why Dave built this car and the locomotive, was the education. He always says, if we don't do it now, who's going to? And he's passionate about educating young people, about Lincoln, but also about the history of railroads in this country.
Oh, that's the one good thing about it. And, the thing is, I think everybody was waiting for actually the car to be built, because the interest has just exploded.
Oh, it has. It absolutely has.
And he'll actually have to go, well, no, we can't go there now, but we can do this then.
Uh-huh.
Because I think enough interest now is to take you through the next 2.5 years.
Oh, no question. And we're already looking into next year. We've got several locations that have indicated interest. They have, specific events that they want us to come to next year, and this year, our primary focus, of course, was finishing the car in time to get it to Springfield. And we did that, and we had a wonderful turnout in Springfield, and the interest has just continued to grow from there. But next year will be even better. And, not only for us, but for the people who are coming to see this, because it's, as the interest grows, that's just a motivator for us to keep going.
Oh, definitely. And we really thank you very much for calling in and giving us this update there, Shannon.
Well, absolutely glad to talk to you guys, and hopefully we'll catch up with you guys out there on the tour somewhere.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'll probably get there soon.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for calling, Shannon.
Thank you much.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Oh,
Okay.
Shannon's a great person. She
Yes.
really is.
Sounds like very enthusiastic about this.
Oh, she is. I met her when we were in with the Leviathan down in Versailles, Kentucky. We were there at the Bluegrass Railroad Museum, which they will be at this year.
Cool.
In September. And the weekend before, because we were there Labor Day weekend last year. And they'll be there this year with the car. They had Civil War reenactment going on at the time. They had a Lincoln impersonator there, and really a nice guy.
Now, was he walking or was he in the
No,
in the car?
he was a walking. He was a walking and a talking.
Okay, now when the people go out to see this, they're going to see the Leviathan, which is a 440 replica, and then the...
Yeah, she's a replica that was built in 1868. She was a group of 4 locomotives in the group of 4 that was built, and the other sister to the Jupiter.
Oh, okay, the one from Promontory Point.
Yeah, from the Golden Spike ceremony, and which the replica for that is out in Promontory. And so, yeah, we have significance there.
So I'm trying to get at is what will people see if they come out to this? They'll see the steam engine, they'll see the funeral car, and
Oh, yeah, they'll see
exhibits
the-
in the car, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
there is exhibits in the car, and it's as close as possible they can get. They have a coffin in it, sitting in there, and the area marked off where the staterooms were, because they had taken out a couple of the staterooms for the coffin.
Okay, now she mentioned they'll be at Galesburg. Now, do you have the dates for the Galesburg train?
Yeah,
Sure.
they'll be the 27th and the 28th of June.
Okay, so that's just to let everybody know if they get the Galesburg train days, they can see it over at Galesburg.
That is correct.
And Galesburg is a stop on Amtrak, so if they
Yeah.
want to take the train down there,
They could
there's
take the train down there. In fact, I believe somebody's planning a trip there.
20th Century maybe?
It could be the 20th Century Club. It could be somebody else.
Could be.
Maybe even a Pullman journey.
And speaking of train shows, we got the one coming up in Bensonville.
Yeah.
It's 12th and 13th, I believe.
Yeah, the Franklin Park.
Franklin
Railroad.
Park, that's it.
Franklin Park Railroad Days. I'll be there with the Midwest Rails modular G-Gauge Club.
Oh, you guys always have that big layout in the
We
back
have the
there.
layout right by the tower, between the tower and the caboose.
Right. Yeah,
Right where the lineup is, and actually right near where the stage is going to be for all the music.
oh, good spot.
Yeah, and also with Operation Lifesaver.
And speaking of which, Operation Lifesaver, at Train Days, you were there with Operation Lifesaver. Would you like to remind everybody what the general goal of Operation Lifesaver is?
Operation Lifesaver is to promote safety, grade crossing, people around the tracks, grade crossing, and also trespassing, because that is becoming more of a problem in recent years. People using the rails for a shortcut.
Yeah, basically, the basic rule is stay off the tracks.
Yes.
One, it's private property. Even though it doesn't have a fence around it, it's still private property.
Yeah, it's like the new slogan says, see tracks, think train.
That's right.
Anytime is train time. And
Well, we're asking for common sense here, and
yeah, it's a lot of common sense, but a lot of people do things automatically and they forget sometimes. and then all of a sudden,
And there's
Yeah.
business at grade crossings. You see the gates go off. Stop.
yeah, just
Don't
stop.
go around them.
Don't try to make it across just because you think they, sometimes trains come through and the gates aren't all the way down.
Right. And is there anything else we could throw into there? Don't race the train to the crossing.
Don't race the train to the crossing.
Don't stop on the crossing. If traffic's
Yeah.
backed up, stay off the track.
Definitely. It's amazing how many things.
Locally,
Don't walk across bridges.
Yep.
Don't walk across. Don't go through tunnels or underpasses with tracks. The area might not be close, or too close. Remember, trains extend at least 3 to 3.5 feet beyond the tracks. Some of the cars, because of the width.
Yeah, you don't want to be too close because stuff does fall off the railroad cars. And unfortunate, that's the way it is.
Yeah, just like
It is a dangerous place to be. Even the railroad workers will tell you it's dangerous.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like all the grade crossing accidents that do happen, over 75% of them are on what they call fully protected crossings.
And now the fully
With the
protected
flashing
means
light, means you have your flashing lights, you have the gates, you have bells playing, and cars. Just that's 75% of all the accidents happen there. In the private crossings, what they're talking about is usually just a crossbuck signal, and that's less than 25%.
but the private crossings are usually owned by some company or somebody,
Yeah,
and it's not heavily crossed. So,
but it has its fair share.
yes.
But yeah, and another funny statistic: 75% are all men drivers. Women are safer drivers than men when it comes to railroad crossings.
That's an interesting statistic.
Yeah, it's so if you have the girl can get in the car and say, "Get out of the way if we're going across tracks. I'll drive."
Okay.
But it's great. I mean, I remember as a kid, I used to go near the tracks, wave at the engineer and everything else, putting pennies on the rails, and now they don't want you to do it, because of the chance. Because especially with the newer wheel profiles, they're more slanted. So if anything is on the tracks, it gets shot out.
Okay.
So
that's
that
I didn't
penny,
know. Yeah.
the penny,
Becomes a projectile.
yes, it does. And so, yeah, we can't put the pennies on the rails anymore. And that's a shame. But it was one of those joys of childhood. Some things have to disappear. So, and you got to be careful when you're near also because, like in the winter, you don't hear the train. The snow muffles it.
Yes.
The atmospheric conditions are such that it muffles the sound. It looks pretty, but
Okay, now, if people want to go down to the tracks and watch trains, what should they do? Like one, be it at a metro station.
well, yeah, you can do it from some of the station platform, or do it from a public walkway
Or a street,
or street
sidewalk.
where you're far enough away, or if you go to a nice fenced area, and you can see the trains go by.
Which is, there's a lot of viewing platforms now. A couple of weeks ago, I was out at the one at Homewood.
Yes.
And that one's real nice. It's up
Yeah.
elevated above the track, so you're looking down. You could see both the old EJ&E line and the Illinois Central line. And there's enough train traffic. There's like 3 trains an hour through there.
Yeah, because you have the passenger traffic from Metra,
Right.
with their electric trains. You've got Amtrak coming through, and you also have the freight. Not only coming down the line, you got small freight going in, but you also have trains coming in and out of the yard.
So there's the one at Homewood. Where's another viewing platform?
Rochelle,
Rochelle.
and that's where the main lines of the Burlington Northern, Santa Fe, and Union Pacific cross. and each has about 50 trains per day. So you got constant traffic there.
I'm thinking Matheson, not Homewood. Matheson's the interchange between the J and the CN.
Yes.
Homewood's also got one. They have it hooked into the speaker system so you can hear the dispatcher when you know
Yeah.
the train is coming.
Yeah, it's at the South Yard entrance is where the platform's located, to where they get in.
Yeah, Matheson is the one I was thinking of.
Oh, okay.
Wrong words came out. They got a EJ&E caboose at the base of the incline to the
They do?
to the platform. Yes, with a crossing gate,
Okay.
and it's a long walk. It's a ramp, and it's actually the viewing platform in Matheson's on the second story level. It's way above, and it's real nice. You get nice
Yeah.
pictures. The sun's not always cooperative, but it really won't hurt.
When
you
did they
taking
open
pictures.
that platform?
About 6 months ago.
Okay.
It was last year sometime, and we finally got out there to take a look.
Yeah, I haven't been there out to see that.
And we went out to Joliet Union Station to see all the changes there. That was
Mhm.
interesting. They now put up a fence on the original platform, so if you go to the original side, there's no problem. You won't be able to wander onto the tracks. It's all fenced off.
Oh,
now.
okay, so they are making it accessible to the people so they could still rail fan there?
So far, I have to say,
So
so
far.
far, yes. What else was we were doing that day? Oh, that was just the two places we went.
Okay.
On a little trip. Is there any other places you could think of that are safe for people to go? Obviously, any overpass that has railroad
Yeah,
tracks
any
underneath.
overpass.
Roosevelt Road.
Yeah, Roosevelt Road, or even Roundout.
Yep,
Out by
Roundup.
Lance Farm. The tower is now closed, but they finally made the bridge over, completed the bike path on the old
North Shoreline.
North Shore line.
Well, that's always been there. I think they just remodeled
Yeah, well,
it.
the bridge only got in recent years.
In recent years, that's a good spot. You go up on that bridge and you can watch the trains running underneath.
Because I used to sit on the old abutments there where the
Mhm.
bridge is now, and I caught some good train shots. That's where I caught when they had the couple excursions come through with 261, and also the experimental trains that Amtrak had in '93. I was stationed up at Great Lakes and went over there to catch the trains going up and down the tracks.
Sure.
The X2000, the one from Sweden, and the one from Germany, the ICE.
Oh, okay.
And so I got both of them coming through there. It was kind of neat.
And of course, if you really want to ride trains and be close to them, go out to our favorite museums.
Oh, definitely.
Illinois Railway Museum, Fox Valley, Hoosier Valley.
The Heston Steam Museum,
That's East Troy.
East Troy up in Wisconsin, even the Mid-Continent, which will be having steam soon.
Up in Green Bay.
Well, the Green Bay, believe it or not, yeah, the Green Bay National Railroad Museum there does have a loop of track out that they do give train rides on.
And there's the one in Elkhart, but that doesn't have anything operating.
Right.
They have a little
New York Central.
They have a little live, small layout, one of those 1-inch scale that you could
Yeah.
ride on, but it wasn't working the day we were up there. St. Louis,
North Judson,
yes, Hoosier Valley,
the Hoosier Valley line.
steam
So-
and diesel.
Yes, and so there's enough around for people if they really want to.
Now, do they give live rides over at the one in St. Louis, National Transport Museum?
They have an 1.5 inch scale there, and yes, they do.
Okay, so they do have something you can ride.
Yeah, they put 1.5 inch out there, but it has a nice variety of the locomotives and such.
And the best thing you do is, in our area, ride a metro train on the weekends. It's $7 for the all-day pass.
So that way you can visit a different part of the city
You can
or the suburbs that you haven't.
Take a ride from Chicago to Aurora, come back, go out to Elgin and back, go out to Harvard and back. Make sure you have lots of timetables so you don't miss anything.
Yeah,
And it's a nice way to entertain the kids for an hour and a half.
it is. This way they can show them different ways to get around.
Now, I have a quick question. We were talking about conductor, engineer.
Yeah.
On the metro trains, there's only one conductor. The other guys are known as trainmen, right?
Yes.
And
They're collectors.
they're collectors. Okay.
Yeah, and not such trainmen as such as collectors.
They're collectors. So that'd be the first step to becoming a conductor?
Yeah, well, yeah, you'll be a collector, and then you become a conductor. After about 6 months, you're supposed 3 to 6 months. They'll send you to school to become a conductor,
So the
and
bottom,
that's where you'll get your freight training at
Right.
the same time.
so the bottom line is, as opposed to what the news organizations have told us, you have to be trained, you have to study hard, and know all the rules before you can be a conductor or an engineer.
Correct. And the one thing also now, conductors several years ago had to start getting their license.
Ah.
So now everybody has a license on the train.
And is there anything else you want to? Now, this is all in relationship to that accident. So, one of the things the media got wrong was they kept calling the engineer the conductor. They kept calling the conductor something else, and they called the engineer something else. They called him the driver. A couple of media outlets even asked how come the guy didn't turn before the curve. And
Oh yeah, that's one that really surprised me the most. Why it didn't turn? There are no steering wheels on trains.
well, not in the U.S., but believe it or not, in Europe they have steering wheels. They have
What? Okay, now there was actually a couple. We could say is steering wheel.
but they use it for brakes and acceleration.
Well, yeah, it's your It's basically what we call Johnson bar. That will take and do your steam cutoffs,
Mm-hmm.
and so this way, when you have in the forward or reverse, and they had a wheel which gave it fine tuning.
Oh, okay.
Whereas instead of just a lever, you had a wheel which moved it back and forth.
Yeah, on some European locomotives, there is a steering wheel, but it's used for brakes.
Yeah.
Instead of having a brake where you turn the lever or you slide the lever like they do on the L, you would turn this big steering wheel, basically. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the media gets confused, because when they go call it up on Wikipedia, they always point to European locomotives, never American locomotives.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, there is no steering wheel.
Yep.
I think we better sign off now,
Yep, put the train in the yard and lock it up.
and I'll see you next time.
Yes. Oh, did we catch him off guard?
All aboard! Next stop, Chicago Junction.
Join us again next time when we take our railroad of imagination, our continuing journey through our wonderful world of trains. Chicago Junction is a production of this Windy City Hometown Radio Network and can be heard over this station, as well as the WindyCityHometown.com, where recordings of all our shows may be heard. Once again, all aboard. This is your announcer, Brian Valou, and host Doug Kennick.
Yes.
Konyak. Thank you for listening. Oh yeah, our conductor was portrayed by Charlie Johnson, a struggling young actor in need of work. Have a great day.
You have been listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Tuesday, or make that Wednesday, May the 27th, the year 2015. Chicago Junction was produced by Jack Ryan, directed by John DeVita, And special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Steflik of WRHS-FM Norwich and executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is Mr. John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Wednesday, May the 20th. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. Have a good day, everyone. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois.